November 17, 1965. The highlands of central Vietnam shimmer under a thin morning haze. What began as another troop movement for the U.S. 1st Cavalry Division would soon enter history as one of the bloodiest ambushes of the war. The men of the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, having just fought at Landing Zone X-Ray, were ordered to relocate to a new clearing called LZ Albany, a short, seemingly simple march through the jungle. Commanders believed they were moving away from battle. In reality, they were marching straight into the jaws of an entire North Vietnamese regiment. The soldiers moved in column, nearly 500 men stretched along a narrow trail bordered by waist-high elephant grass and scattered trees. Helicopters had delivered them days earlier, demonstrating the new concept of airmobile warfare, where American speed and flexibility could outmaneuver an enemy bound to the ground. Spirits were high but weary. The heat pressed down like a hand, the grass whispered with each step, and distant artillery thunder rolled from the mountains. Reminders of a war that never slept. Radio chatter came and went. Light contact to the west, a captured North Vietnamese soldier warning of nearby forces. But nothing about Vietnam ever felt certain. The battalion paused, reorganized, and moved again, each man trusting the map, the compass, and the discipline drilled into him at Fort Benning. In the middle of the formation, Captain George Forrest's company maintained spacing and silence. To the rear, others carried wounded from earlier engagements, the smell of antiseptic mixing with the earth. Unknown to them, the 8th Battalion of the 66th NVA Regiment had been tracking their movements since dawn. Concealed by the thick canopy, enemy spotters waited for the perfect moment, when the long American column would stretch thin and vulnerable. The jungle, calm only seconds before, held its breath. The patrol that began as a routine relocation now stood on the edge of chaos. Within moments, the grass would explode with gunfire, and the men would find themselves fighting not for ground or orders, but simply to survive. The first bursts came from the left flank, short, savage bursts of automatic fire that ripped through the elephant grass. Within seconds, the entire column erupted. North Vietnamese soldiers, expertly concealed in spider holes and tree lines, poured fire into the stretched American formation. Mortar rounds thudded in the distance, then closer. Men dropped to the ground, seeking cover where there was none. The battalion had walked straight into an ambush planned with chilling precision. At the head of the column, Alpha Company was hit first and hardest. The forward elements vanished in a storm of bullets. Radios crackled with overlapping calls for help, coordinates, and gunship support. Leaders moved through the chaos, shouting orders to close ranks and return fire. Platoons broke into fragments, pockets of men forming small defensive circles, laying down suppressive fire with M60 machine guns. The sound was deafening. The metallic roar of rifles, the echo of grenades, the whine of bullets slicing through grass. Within minutes, air support was summoned. Huey gunships swooped in low, their miniguns spitting fiery arcs into the treeline. Above them, F-100 Super Sabres dove in with bombs and napalm, turning swaths of jungle into pillars of flame. The air shimmered with heat, smoke, and screams. Despite overwhelming fire, American discipline held. Medics crawled through the open, dragging the wounded to cover under sheets of tracer fire. Lieutenant Payne, pinned behind a termite mound, called in artillery on his own coordinates. Better to risk friendly shrapnel than be overrun. Minutes later, shells from a distant firebase began pounding the enemy's flank, shaking the earth beneath both sides. By mid-afternoon, the column had splintered into isolated positions. Commanders tried to re-establish contact, but the radio nets were chaos. The wounded called softly for help. Ammunition ran low. Then came the order every man feared: hold your ground, dig in, and survive until dark. The sun began to sink behind the Annamite ridges. Smoke rolled low across the battlefield, and the jungle fell into a deceptive quiet. But the fight was far from over. Night was coming, and with it, the certainty that the enemy would return as darkness settled over the Ia Drang Valley. The battlefield glowed with embers and dying fires. The jungle that had roared with battle hours earlier now whispered with the movement of unseen shapes. American soldiers, bloodied and exhausted, tightened their perimeters, stacking ammunition and checking each other's wounds in silence. The order was clear: hold until dawn. No one expected sleep. Every few minutes, a flare arced into the black sky, bathing the landscape in ghostly white light. Shadows leapt across the elephant grass, sometimes just branches swaying, sometimes something worse. The North Vietnamese probed constantly, testing the lines with sporadic bursts of fire. Each time, the Americans answered with disciplined volleys and the muffled thud of grenades. In the eerie silence between attacks, whispers of prayer mixed with the static hiss of radios. Overhead, gunships circled like guardians, firing into the treeline whenever movement flickered on sensors. The coordination between ground, artillery, and air units became the lifeline of survival. Forward observers, some wounded themselves, relayed coordinates through fading batteries to distant firebases that rained steel on the enemy's assembly points. The sky pulsed with distant explosions, a deadly rhythm that kept the NVA at by dawn. The battlefield revealed its terrible cost. Smoke hung low, the grass charred and torn. Medevac Hueys began dropping in, their rotors chopping the morning air as medics carried out the wounded. Despite sniper fire from the treeline, pilots hovered steady, risking everything to lift survivors. Many soldiers who had fought through the night stumbled aboard the choppers with thousand-yard stares. Alive, but changed forever in the end. Nearly 150 Americans were killed and more than 120 wounded. Yet the battalion never broke. Against overwhelming odds, training, fire support, and unshakable resolve turned annihilation into survival. The lessons from LZ Albany: tighter spacing, clearer command nets, and synchronized air-ground coordination reshaped how America fought the rest of the war. As the last Huey lifted from the clearing, the wind from its blades scattered the smoke and ash across the valley. The men of the 7th Cavalry had walked into a nightmare and emerged as proof that even in chaos, courage and coordination could defy the impossible.